The defense grid around Thessar Prime was dying. High Commander Vesesthal stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Vigil, and watched another Allied vessel explode in silent fire. The ship had been the Starward Hope, carrying 300 souls. Now it was debris and expanding gas, consumed by the endless hunger of the Vorash swarm. Vesesthal's 4 arms hung heavy at his sides. 3 centuries. For 300 years, the Kelthara Alliance had held this frontier against the darkness that came from beyond the galactic rim. 7 species had joined together, built fleets, raised families, and died protecting worlds that the rest of the galaxy had forgotten. And now, in the span of 6 months, it was ending. "Commander, the Western defense line has collapsed," reported his tactical officer, a young Kelthara named Thessar. The officer's voice was steady, but Vesesthal could see the fear in his large, dark eyes. "Estimate 20,000 enemy vessels entering the inner system. 20,000. Vesthal looked at his own tactical display. The Kelthara Alliance had 173 ships left. Once, they had commanded 10,000. The largest fleet in the outer territories. They had called themselves the Shield of the Rim. Now they were just tired soldiers waiting to die. "Pull back the remaining forces to the evacuation corridors," Vesthal ordered. "All power to engines and point defense. We protect the transports. Nothing else matters now." On the main view screen, Thessar Prime turned slowly in the darkness. The homeworld of the Kelthara people was beautiful from orbit, with its 3 silver moons and oceans that shimmered purple under its red sun. Vesthal had been born there, in the mountain cities of the northern continent. He had a daughter there. Or he had, before the first Vorash landing craft had touched down 3 days ago. He did not know if she still lived. He tried not to think about it. The Vorash were not like other enemies. They did not want territory, or resources, or political power. They wanted to consume. Every ship in their swarm was a living thing, grown from the bodies of previous victims. Tentacles instead of weapons. Acidic blood instead of fuel. Hive minds instead of computers. They ate metal and flesh equally, breaking down everything they touched into raw material for more bioships, more warriors, more horror. 17 civilizations had fallen to them. 17 entire species wiped from existence. The Kelthara would be the 18th. "Sir, Ambassador Moraine is requesting to speak with you," Thessir said quietly. Vesthal sighed. The human. He had almost forgotten about her. Put her through. The face that appeared on his personal screen was small and soft compared to a Kelthara, with pale skin and dark hair pulled back tightly. Ambassador Lyra Moraine was the only human in the entire Thessar system, sent here 5 years ago as part of some diplomatic mission from Earth. Vesthal had found her strange at first. Humans were new to galactic society, barely 100 years since first contact. Most species considered them primitive, useful only for basic trade. But Moraine had worked hard, learned the Kelthara language, and earned respect. Vesthal considered her a friend, though he would never say it aloud. "Commander," Moraine said. Her voice was tight with stress. "I need you to put me on an evacuation transport. I'm still at the embassy building, and the Vorash are 3 blocks away." "I will send a shuttle immediately," Vesesthal replied. "But Ambassador, you should have left days ago. When the Council refused to send aid, I told you to return to Earth." Moraine's expression hardened. "I'm not abandoning you. Not while there's still a chance. There is no chance," Vesthal said quietly. The distress call was sent to every major civilization. The Anthari Dominion, the Crystalline Collective, the Methane Breathers, even the isolated Vortec. All of them received our request for aid. All of them said no. "What about Earth? What did my people say?" Vesesthal hesitated. Earth sent a formal acknowledgement. They said they were reviewing the situation. That was 8 days ago. We have heard nothing since. He watched Moraine's face fall. For a moment, she looked like she might cry, but she controlled herself. Humans were emotional creatures. Vesisthal had learned. They felt things deeply and tried to hide it. It made them both weak and strong in ways he did not fully understand. "They're not coming," Moraine whispered. "None of them are coming." "No," Vesthal agreed. "We are alone. We have always been alone." The deck shuddered as the Eternal Vigil took a hit. Alarms blared. Vesisthal's tactical display showed 3 Vorash bioships latching onto the port hull, their acid already eating through the outer armor. He issued orders quickly, redirecting repair crews and sealing bulkheads. The bioships were destroyed by point defense fire, but not before they had left wounds that would never fully heal. "Ambassador, I am sending a shuttle to your location now," Vesthal said. "It will arrive in 4 minutes. Be ready." "Understood," Moraine replied. Then, softer, "I'm sorry, Vesisthal. I'm sorry my people didn't help." "You are here," Vesthal said. "That is enough." The connection ended. Vesthal returned his attention to the battle, if it could even be called that. It was more like a slow execution. The Vorash did not hurry. They surrounded their prey, cut off escape, and consumed everything with methodical patience. Around Thessar Prime, the sky was filled with their ships, thousands upon thousands of organic nightmares, pulsing with bioluminescent light, reaching out with appendages that could tear through steel. Another explosion. The carrier ship Defiant Light broke apart, spilling escape pods into the void. Most would be picked off by Vorash fighters before they reached safety. Vesthal wanted to look away, but he forced himself to watch. These were his people. He would witness their deaths. "Sir, the evacuation transports are ready," Thessier reported. 15 ships, carrying approximately 200,000 civilians. They request permission to begin the jump to hyperspace. 200,000. Out of 4 billion. That was all they had managed to save. "Permission granted," Vesisthal said. "All combat vessels, form a defensive screen around the transports. We buy them every second we can." The Eternal Vigil moved into position, along with the remaining warships of the Alliance. They were a pitiful force, battered and damaged, crewed by exhausted soldiers who had not slept in days. But they held the line. They always held the line. The transports began to jump, one by one, their hulls shimmering as they slipped into hyperspace. 3 ships made it. Then 5. Then 8. Then the Vorash struck. A wave of bioships rushed forward, ignoring the defensive fire, throwing themselves at the transports with suicidal fury. They knew the Kelthara were escaping. They would not allow it. 2 transports exploded before they could jump. A third was caught mid-transition, torn apart by the forces involved. Pieces of the ship tumbled back into real space, trailing bodies and atmosphere. "Return fire," Vesthal roared. "Do not let them through." The Eternal Vigil's main guns opened up, firing beams of concentrated energy into the mass of Vorash ships. Each shot killed dozens, but there were always more. Always more. The bio ships crashed against the defensive line like a tide against rocks. And slowly, inevitably, the rocks began to crumble. 10 transports escaped, then 12, then 14. The last transport, the Mercy's Dawn, was attempting to jump when a Vorash heavy cruiser latched onto its engine section. The transport's captain tried desperately to shake free, but the bioship held on, pumping acid into the hull. The transport's systems began to fail. Vesisthal made a decision. "Helm. Ramming course. Target that heavy cruiser." "Sir." Thessier stared at him. "You heard me. Ramming course. All remaining power to forward shields and engines." "But Commander, if we do that, we die," Vesthal said calmly. "We were always going to die, Thessier. At least this way. It means something." The Eternal Vigil turned, its massive frame accelerating toward the Vorash heavy cruiser. The bioship noticed too late. The flagship struck it at full speed, 3 million tons of metal and determination smashing into organic armor. Both ships exploded in a flash of light that briefly outshone Thessar Prime's sun. But the transport was free. The Mercy's Dawn jumped to hyperspace, carrying the last refugees of the Kelthara homeworld. In the debris field that had been the Eternal Vigil, a single escape pod tumbled through space. Inside, High Commander Vesisthal was barely conscious. He had been thrown across the bridge during the impact, and he was pretty sure at least 2 of his arms were broken. Emergency foam had sealed his suit's breaches, but he was losing air slowly. It did not matter. The Vorash would find him soon enough. He activated his personal communicator with one working hand. It still had power. Somehow, he began to record. This is High Commander Vesisthal of the Kelthara Alliance. If anyone finds this message, know that we fought until the end. The Vorash have taken Thessar Prime. Our people are scattered. Our fleet is gone. We sent distress calls to every civilization in the galaxy. No one came. No one helped. The Galactic Council chose to let us die. He coughed, tasting blood. To the species who will face the Vorash next, learn from our mistake. Do not trust the Council. Do not expect mercy from the darkness. Stand together, or fall alone. He paused, then added quietly. To Ambassador Moraine, if you survived, thank you for staying. Tell Earth that the Kelthara remember their kindness. Tell them we understand why they did not come. We were always too far away, too unimportant. It is the way of the galaxy. The strong survive. The weak are forgotten. The communicator began to beep a warning. The Vorash were approaching. Vesisthal could see them on his pod's external cameras. Bioships moving through the debris, like sharks. He closed his eyes and thought of his daughter, of the mountain cities, of 300 years of defiance. The Kelthara had always been alone on the frontier. Perhaps they had been foolish to hope for anything else. Across the system, aboard the transport Mercy's Dawn, Ambassador Lyra Moraine sat in a packed refugee hold and cried. Around her, Kelthara civilians huddled together, silent and traumatized. Children clung to parents who stared at nothing. The ship was bound for the nearest neutral station, 3 weeks away. Behind them, Thessar Prime burned. Moraine pulled out her personal data pad and composed a message. She addressed it to Earth, to the United Nations, to anyone who would listen. Her fingers shook as she typed. This is Ambassador Lyra Moraine, stationed with the Kelthara Alliance. If you can hear this, we're dying out here. The Vorash swarm has taken Thessar Prime. The Kelthara fleet is destroyed. 200,000 refugees escaped out of 4 billion. The Galactic Council refused to help. Everyone refused to help. She stopped, wiping tears from her face. I know. Earth is far away. I know we're just a small diplomatic presence here. I know we're considered weak by galactic standards. But if there's anything we can do, anything at all, these people deserve better than silence. They were right about the galaxy. No one comes when you fall. She sent the message and sat back, exhausted. Around her, the Kelthara refugees waited in the darkness, traveling away from the only home they had ever known. Behind them, the Vorash swarm continued its feast, consuming a civilization that had stood for 300 years. And in the cold void of space, High Commander Vesisthal's escape pod was pulled into the belly of a bioship, never to be seen again. The frontier was lost. The Kelthara alliance was broken. And the galaxy turned its back, as it always had, on those who died in the outer darkness. The Galactic Senate Station floated in neutral space, equidistant from every major civilization. It was an enormous structure, built over centuries by dozens of species working together. Gleaming towers reached outward like the petals of a flower, each one housing the diplomatic quarters of a different member state. At the center was the Grand Council chamber, where representatives met to decide the fate of trillions. Director James Chen stood outside the chamber doors and tried to control his anger. He had been waiting for 3 hours. 3 hours. While the council debated whether to even allow him to speak, as humanity's junior ambassador to the Galactic Council, Chen had little actual power. Earth had been granted membership only 20 years ago, and even then, it was as a minor voice. The older species treated humans like children playing at politics. The doors finally opened. A crystalline being, its body made of living geometric shapes that chimed when they moved, gestured for Chen to enter. "The council will hear your petition now, Director Chen. You have 5 minutes, 5 minutes, to plead for the lives of 4 billion people." Chen straightened his suit and walked into the chamber. The council chamber was circular, with representatives seated in rising tiers around a central platform. Chen took his place on that platform and looked up at the assembled powers of the galaxy. The Anthari Dominion occupied the highest seats, insectoid beings in elaborate robes who considered themselves the rightful rulers of civilized space. Below them sat the Crystalline Collective, the methane breathers in their pressurized suits, the Vortech with their triple eyes, and dozens of others. Humanity's seat was on the lowest tier, barely above the floor. "Honored Council," Chen began, keeping his voice steady. "I come before you to request immediate military intervention in the Thessar Prime system. The Kelthara Alliance is under attack by the Vorash Swarm. Their defense fleet has been reduced to less than 200 ships. Without aid, the entire Kelthara species faces extinction within days." An Anthari representative clicked its mandibles dismissively. "The Council is aware of the situation in the outer territories. We have reviewed the Kelthara distress call." "Then you know how desperate their situation is," Chen said. "The Vorash have already consumed 17 civilizations. The Kelthara have held the frontier for 3 centuries, protecting all of us from this threat. They deserve our help." "The outer territories are not our concern," said a crystalline voice, musical and cold. "The Kelthara chose to settle the edge of the galaxy. They accepted the risks involved. It would be inefficient to divert military resources to a region of no strategic value." Chen felt his anger rising but forced it down. "No strategic value? The Vorash don't stop. Every species they consume makes them stronger. If we let them take the Kelthara, they'll push deeper into the galaxy. Eventually, they'll reach worlds that you do consider strategically valuable. The Vorash have never advanced past the frontier in 1,000 years," replied an Anthari. "They consume isolated civilizations and then retreat to digest their conquest. Historical pattern suggests they will not push further inward. In Stam, Antelder Zervi. Enclode. Antelder Zervi. Historical pattern?" Chen stared in disbelief. "You're willing to gamble billions of lives on historical pattern?" "We are willing to make logical decisions based on available data," the Anthari said coolly. "Which is more than we can say for humanity. Your species has been in galactic society for barely a century. You have limited military capability and no experience in large-scale warfare. Your petition demonstrates emotional thinking rather than strategic analysis." A wave of agreement rippled through the chamber. Chen could see it on their faces, or what passed for faces among these species. They thought he was naive, a child begging adults to fix a problem he didn't understand. "What about the mutual defense clause in the Galactic Charter?" Chen demanded. "The Kelthara are members of this council. You're obligated to assist them. The mutual defense clause applies to threats against core territories," a Vortech representative explained patiently, as if speaking to someone slow. "The Thessar system is classified as frontier space. The clause does not apply." "That's a technicality and you know it," Chen shot back. "You're hiding behind legal language to justify abandoning allies." The chamber erupted in angry chimes, clicks, and whistles. The council members did not appreciate being accused of cowardice. Even if it was true, the Anthari representative stood, its insectoid body looming large. "Director Chen, you forget your place. Humanity is a junior member of this council. You do not have standing to question our decisions." The petition for military aid to the Kelthara Alliance is denied. This discussion is concluded. Wait, Chen said desperately. Just give me one more minute. The discussion is concluded, the Anthari repeated firmly. You are dismissed. Guards appeared at Chen's sides, ready to escort him out. He looked around the chamber one last time, searching for any sign of compassion or courage. He found none. These civilizations had grown comfortable in their power. They had forgotten what it meant to struggle, to fight for survival. The Kelthara were dying, and the council was choosing to do nothing. Chen let the guards lead him out. As the doors closed behind him, he heard the council moving on to their next item of business. Something about trade regulations. The death of an entire species was just another agenda item to be dismissed and forgotten. He walked through the station's corridors in a daze. Other diplomats passed by, barely acknowledging him. To them, he was just another minor ambassador from a minor species. They had no idea that everything was about to change. Chen found a quiet observation deck and sat down, staring out at the stars. His personal communicator buzzed. It was a secure channel from Earth. Voice only. He answered it immediately. This is Chen, Director. This is Fleet Admiral Okoro Adeyemi. I assume the council rejected the petition? 2. Adeyemi. They didn't even give me a full hearing, Chen said bitterly. 5 minutes. That's all the Kelthara were worth to them. There was a pause. Then Adeyemi said quietly, Then we proceed as planned. Protocol. Lazarus is now active. Chen felt his breath catch. Are you certain? There's no going back once we do this. The council had their chance. Adeyemi replied. They chose silence. Now we show them the price of that choice. Return to Earth immediately. The fleet mobilizes in 48 hours. The connection ended. Chen sat back and closed his eyes. Protocol. Lazarus. The plan that humanity had been developing in secret for 40 years, ever since they realized how the galaxy truly worked. The plan that would either save them or destroy them. He thought back to Earth, to the hidden shipyards in the outer solar system, to the massive construction projects that other species had dismissed as civilian infrastructure. Humanity had been building something in the darkness, something terrible and necessary, because humans had learned a hard lesson when they first joined galactic society. The strong did not help the weak. The powerful did not protect the vulnerable. In this galaxy, you stood alone, or you fell alone. The Council's refusal to help the Kelthara was just another confirmation of what humanity already knew. But humanity remembered. They remembered being alone on Earth, divided into nations that fought endlessly. They remembered the hard climb to unity, the wars that nearly destroyed them, the choice to finally work together or die. And when they reached the stars and saw how the galaxy operated, they made a decision. Never again. Not to humanity. Not to anyone who called for help. The journey back to Earth took 3 days. Chen spent most of it reviewing classified documents, preparing himself for what was coming. He learned things that shocked him, even though he had suspected some of it. The scale of what humanity had built was staggering. Earth had been preparing for war since the day they joined the Galactic Council. Not openly, not obviously, but methodically and completely. While other species laughed at human primitive kinetics and obsolete projectile weapons, Earth had been perfecting them to a degree that no one could imagine. Chen read reports about railguns that could accelerate projectiles to 30% the speed of light, nuclear weapons with yields measured in gigatons, armor plating so thick that it could withstand direct hits from energy weapons, ships designed not for elegance, but for brutal efficiency. And the numbers. God. The numbers. Humanity had been building fleets in secret locations across the solar system and beyond. How had they hidden it? Chen found the answer in the files. Other species were arrogant. They saw what they expected to see. When they looked at Earth's construction projects, they saw civilian infrastructure, mining operations, scientific research. They never looked deeper because they didn't think humans were capable of deception on this scale. The transport arrived at Earth orbit. Chen transferred to a shuttle that took him down to Geneva, to the underground complex that housed United Earth Command. He passed through multiple security checkpoints, each one more intense than the last. Finally, he was escorted to the war room. The war room was a massive space carved out of solid rock, deep beneath the Swiss Alps. Holographic displays showed ship positions, resource allocations, communication networks. Hundreds of people worked at terminals, coordinating the largest military operation in human history. At the center of it all stood Fleet Admiral Okoro Adeyemi. Adeyemi was a tall woman with dark skin and gray hair, pulled back in a tight bun. She had commanded Earth's defense fleet during the border wars with the Centauri pirates. She had lost her ship and half her crew but completed the mission. She was exactly the kind of person you wanted leading humanity into the unknown. "Director Chen," Adeyemi said, turning to greet him. "Welcome home. I trust the council was as disappointing as expected?" "They wouldn't even listen," Chen replied. "The Anthari representative called us emotional and naive." "Good," Adeyemi said. "Let them think that. It will make this more effective. Admiral, are we really doing this?" Adeyemi gestured to the holographic displays. "We're not going to war, Director. We're ending one. The Vorash have been consuming civilizations for 1,000 years because no one had the courage to stop them. The Council is content to let species die as long as it doesn't affect them directly. That ends now." "But what if we fail?" Chen asked. "What if the fleet isn't enough?" "Then we fail together," Adeyemi said simply. "But I don't think we will. Humans have an advantage that other species don't understand. We're stubborn. We don't know when to quit. And we've spent 40 years building something that the galaxy isn't ready for." She pulled up a new display. It showed ship positions throughout the solar system and beyond. Hundreds of markers, each one representing a capital ship. Thousands more for support vessels. Chen stared at the numbers and felt his mind struggle to comprehend the scale. "How did we build all this?" he whispered. "Carefully," said a new voice. She was the chief engineer of the entire project, a Russian woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and grease stains on her hands. "We started small. 1 shipyard, then 2, then 10. We built them in the outer solar system, in the Kuiper Belt, in interstellar space. Places where other species don't look. We automated most of the process and used AI to coordinate construction. It took 40 years, but we did it." "And no one noticed?" Chen asked. "They noticed," Volkov said with a slight smile. "But they saw what they expected. Mining operations, scientific research, civilian construction projects. The Crystalline Collective even sent inspectors to some of our facilities. They looked at our railgun foundries and thought they were making industrial equipment. Humans are good at misdirection. Director Chen, we've been doing it to each other for thousands of years." Adeyemi brought up another display. This one, showing the Thessar system in real time. The Kelthara defense fleet was down to less than 100 ships. The Vorash swarm surrounded the planet like a living shroud. Even as they watched, another Kelthara ship exploded. "We're running out of time," Adeyemi said. "The fleet is assembled. All ships are armed and ready. Crews have been briefed. We're waiting on your order, Director." Chen blinked in surprise. "My order? Admiral, I'm just a diplomat. You command the military." "This isn't just a military decision," Adeyemi replied. "This is the moment humanity steps onto the galactic stage as a major power. The Council will see this as an act of aggression. They'll demand explanations. Some species might even declare war on us. You need to be prepared for the political fallout." Chen looked at the display, at the dying Kelthara fleet, at the billions of lives hanging in the balance. He thought about the Council, about their cold dismissal, about the way they had treated him like a child. He thought about humanity's long history of standing up to bullies, of fighting for what was right even when it was stupid and dangerous. Activate Protocol Lazarus, Chen said. Send the fleet. Adeyemi nodded once. She turned to her staff and spoke clearly. All stations. This is Fleet Admiral Adeyemi. Protocol Lazarus is now active. Initiate fleet mobilization. Jump coordinates, Thessar Prime System. Prepare for hostile engagement with Vorash swarm forces. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. The war room erupted in controlled chaos. Officers shouted orders. Displays lit up with movement. Across the solar system, in hidden shipyards and secret bases, humanity's military machine came to life. Chen watched it happen and felt a strange mix of fear and pride. Humanity was about to do something insane. They were going to war with a force that had consumed 17 civilizations. They were going to defy the Galactic Council's decision. They were going to risk everything for people they barely knew. But that was humanity. That was what made them different. They had spent their entire history fighting for impossible causes and somehow surviving. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe this time they would fail. Or maybe, just maybe, the galaxy was about to learn that humans don't abandon their friends. Ambassador Lyra Moraine floated in zero gravity aboard what remained of the Kelthera command vessel Steadfast Resolve. The ship was dying slowly. Atmosphere leaking from dozens of hull breaches. Power fluctuating as damaged systems fought to stay online. Around her, Kelthara crew members worked frantically to keep their ship functional for just a little longer. It had been 2 days since the fall of Thessar Prime. 2 days since High Commander Vesisthal had sacrificed himself to save the last evacuation transport. Moraine had watched it happen from the Mercy's dawn, had seen the eternal vigil explode in silent fire. She had cried then. She was done crying now. The Kelthara refugees had scattered across 3 systems, seeking shelter wherever they could find it. Most stations had accepted them reluctantly, offering minimal support. The galaxy was not generous to the defeated. Moraine had transferred to the Steadfast Resolve, one of the few remaining combat vessels, because she refused to sit safely in a refugee camp while the Kelthara fought their last battle. Ambassador, you should be in a secure section, said Captain Threval. The Kelthara officer had lost one arm in the fighting, but she commanded her ship with calm efficiency despite the pain. The Vorash are pushing closer. This vessel will be a target. Everywhere is a target now, Moraine replied. I might as well be useful. She was helping coordinate communications between the scattered Kelthara forces. It was a hopeless task. The Alliance had perhaps 60 ships left, spread across multiple systems, all damaged and low on supplies. The Vorash swarm had thousands. They were hunting down the survivors methodically, consuming every ship they found. Moraine's communicator buzzed. She checked it and saw a message from a Kelthara civilian station in the neighboring system. The Vorash had found them. They were requesting evacuation support. Moraine looked at her tactical display and felt her heart sink. There were no ships close enough to help. The civilians would die alone. She sent a response anyway, promising help that would never come. What else could she do? At least, they would die with hope instead of despair. Contact on long-range sensors, announced the Steadfast Resolve's tactical officer. Multiple Vorash bioships approaching from Galactic North. Estimate 200 vessels. 200. The Steadfast Resolve had 3 working weapon systems and shields that barely functioned. This would not be a battle. This would be an execution. Prepare to jump to hyperspace, Captain Threval ordered. Set course for the rally point. Captain, if we jump, the civilian station in the next system will have no protection, Moraine said quietly. Thrival's face, already exhausted, became even more tired. I know, Ambassador, but we cannot save them. We can only survive, and hope that survival means something. The words hung in the air. Moraine wanted to argue, to demand they stay and fight, But she knew Thrival was right. The Kelthara had been making these impossible choices for weeks. Save one group or another. Fight here or retreat there. Every decision meant someone died. Every choice meant someone was abandoned. Jump drive is offline, the tactical officer reported. We took damage to the hyperdrive core. Repairs will take at least 6 hours. 6 hours. The Vorash would be on them in 30 minutes. Thrival closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them again, they held a terrible resignation. All hands. This is the captain. Prepare for combat. We will engage the Vorash and buy time for the civilian station to evacuate. May our deaths have meaning. The crew moved to their stations without complaint. They had known this was coming. They had all known they would die eventually. At least, this way. They would die, fighting. Moraine strapped herself into an emergency seat and gripped the armrests. She had never been in actual combat before. Her diplomatic training had covered negotiation, cultural sensitivity, trade agreements. Nothing about how to face death in the cold void of space. The Vorash bioships appeared on the view screen. They were hideous things, all organic curves and pulsing appendages. Some looked like enormous squids, with tentacles that trailed for kilometers. Others resembled insects, with hard carapaces and multiple eyes. All of them glowed with bioluminescent light, a sickly green that made Moraine's stomach turn. They're beautiful, in a way, Thrival said quietly. Nature perfected for destruction. I wonder if they understand what they're doing, or if they're just following instinct. Does it matter? Moraine asked. No, Thrival admitted. I suppose it doesn't. The Vorash opened fire first. Organic projectiles, grown from the bodies of previous victims, launched from specialized chambers in their hulls. The projectiles were alive, seeking targets with primitive intelligence. They splashed against the steadfast Resolve's shields, acid eating through the energy barriers. The Kelthara ship returned fire with its remaining weapons. Energy beams cut through several bioships, flash cooking their organic armor. But for every Vorash vessel destroyed, 3 more took its place. They were not afraid. They did not retreat. They just kept coming. Shields at 40%, the tactical officer reported. Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12. Fire suppression systems failing. Moraine watched crew members die. An explosion ripped through the bridge, killing 2 officers instantly. Thrival was thrown from her command chair, blood streaming from a head wound. Moraine unbuckled herself and floated over, using her basic first aid training to seal the wound with emergency foam. Ambassador, Thrival gasped. You need to get to an escape pod. Not without you, Moraine replied. I am the captain. I stay with my ship. That's a stupid tradition, and you know it, Moraine said firmly. You're injured, and your ship is dying. Come with me. Before Thrival could argue, the steadfast Resolve shuddered violently. Multiple Vorash ships had latched onto the hull, their acid eating through armor. The ship's power systems began to fail. Emergency lights flickered on, casting everything in red. All hands, abandon ship, Thrival ordered weakly. Get to the escape pods. Move. The surviving crew members fled to the escape bays. Moraine helped Thrival float through corridors filled with smoke and debris. Behind them, they could hear the Vorash boarding the ship, their inhuman screams echoing through the metal corridors. They reached an escape pod just as the Vorash broke through the final bulkhead. Moraine shoved Thrival into the pod, then climbed in herself. She slammed the emergency launch button. The pod shot away from the dying ship with acceleration that crushed them both against the back wall. Through the pod's tiny window, Moraine watched the steadfast Resolve die. The Vorash consumed it from the inside out, organic matter spreading like infection through the ship's corridors. Within minutes, there was nothing left but an empty hull and the Vorash feeding on what remained. How many pods launched? Thrival asked quietly. Moraine checked the pod's sensors. 7, out of a crew of 100. They floated in silence for a while. The pod's systems were basic, designed only for short-range rescue. They had maybe 20 hours of air. Maybe. And they were nowhere near a friendly station. "We're going to die out here," Threeval said. It wasn't a question. "Probably," Moraine agreed. "I'm sorry you came with us, Ambassador. You could have returned to Earth when you had the chance. You could have been safe." I would. Moraine thought about that. She could have left. Should have left. But she had stayed because... Why? Because it was right. Because the Kelthara deserved someone to witness their end? Because she couldn't live with herself if she abandoned people who needed help? "I'm not sorry," she said finally. "If I'm going to die, at least it's for something that matters." The pod drifted through space, one of millions of pieces of debris in a battlefield that stretched across light years. Other escape pods floated nearby, each one holding a handful of survivors with nowhere to go. The Vorash ships moved past them, ignoring the pods for now. They were focused on the civilian station. On easier prey, Moraine tried her communicator, knowing it was useless. The pod's emergency beacon was broadcasting. But who would hear it? Who would come? The Council had made their position clear. The Kelthara were alone. She tried anyway. She sent a message on every frequency. A desperate plea to anyone who might be listening. "This is Ambassador Lyra Moraine, representing Earth. I'm adrift in the Thessar sector with Kelthara survivors. The Vorash swarm is hunting us. If anyone can hear this, please help. Please, don't let them die for nothing." Static was her only answer. She sent the message again. And again. Her voice grew hoarse. But she kept transmitting. Because what else could she do? Give up? Accept death? That wasn't human nature. Humans didn't surrender easily. They fought until there was nothing left to fight with. Thrival watched her with something that might have been pity. "Your people aren't coming, Ambassador. Accept it." "Maybe not," Moraine said. "But I won't stop asking." Hours passed. The pod's air grew stale. Moraine and Thrival took turns sleeping, conserving oxygen. When Moraine was awake, she watched the stars through the tiny window and thought about Earth. She thought about her family, her friends, the life she had left behind to become a diplomat. Had it been worth it? She didn't know. She was drifting into sleep when the pod's sensors started screaming. Moraine jerked awake, fumbling with the controls. "What is it?" "More Vorash." Threeval was staring at the sensor display with an expression of complete confusion. "I don't know. The sensors are showing massive gravitational distortions. Dozens of them. No. Hundreds. But that's impossible. Nothing creates gravity waves on that scale except the space in front of them tore open." That was the only way Moraine could describe it. Reality itself seemed to rip apart, like fabric being shredded by invisible hands. Light poured from the wound in space, brilliant and terrible. The pod's sensors overloaded. Alarms blared. "What is that?" Moraine shouted over the noise. "Jump signatures." Threeval whispered. "But I've never seen jump signatures like this. They're violent, uncontrolled, like someone is forcing their way into reality." More tears appeared in space. 10, 20, 50, each one blazing with light. And from those wounds, ships began to emerge. Not elegant ships like the ones the Council used, with smooth hulls and graceful curves. These were brutal slabs of metal, all hard angles and aggressive design. They were enormous, some of them larger than the Kelthara's biggest dreadnoughts. And there were so many of them, hundreds of ships, appearing from nowhere, their hulls painted in dark colors that absorbed light. "Who are they?" Moraine asked, her voice barely a whisper. Threeval was working her controls frantically, trying to identify the ships. "I'm getting... It can't be. The identification codes are reading as human." Moraine felt her heart stop. What? These are human ships, Thrival said, disbelief in her voice. Earth designation. United Nations markings. But this is impossible. Earth doesn't have a fleet this size. They barely have 50 warships total, according to Council records. More ships kept appearing. The tiers in space were everywhere now, filling the Thessar sector with violent light. The Vorash bioships, which had been hunting survivors, suddenly stopped. Even the swarm seemed confused by what was happening. And then a voice cut across every frequency. It was human, speaking in accented English, that was somehow being translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. The voice was calm, almost conversational, but there was iron underneath. Attention, Vorash swarm. This is the United Earth Navy. You have attacked our allies. You have ignored our warnings. We are humanity, and we have come to collect a debt written in blood. No quarter will be given. No surrender accepted. This is your only warning. Moraine stared at the sensor display. At the hundreds of human ships now filling the space around Thessar Prime. At the massive flagship at the center of the fleet, a ship so large it created its own gravity field. At the weapons ports opening along the hulls, revealing guns of a size and type she had never seen before. They came, she whispered. Oh God, they actually came. Beside her, Thrival was crying. Great tears rolled down her face, born of exhaustion and relief, and something that might have been hope. How? She asked. How did they build this? How did no one know? Moraine watched the human fleet move into formation, precise and coordinated. She saw weapons charging, saw smaller ships launching from carrier bays, saw an armada that had been built in secret and hidden for decades. Because we're good at secrets, Moraine said quietly. Because humans have been underestimated our entire history, and because we remember what it's like to call for help and hear nothing but silence. The human flagship's weapons locked onto the nearest Vorash concentration. A moment later, reality itself seemed to scream as humanity opened fire. Fleet Admiral Okoro Adeyemi stood on the bridge of the UENS Indomitable and watched her fleet tear reality apart. The jump drives humanity had developed were not elegant. They did not gently slip through space like the drives used by other species. They were violent, forcing open wounds in the fabric of reality through pure, calculated brutality. It took enormous energy and left scars in space that would take years to heal. But it got the job done. Final jump complete, reported Commander Martinez from the navigation station. All 500 dreadnoughts accounted for. 1,200 destroyers in formation. 300 carrier groups launching fighters. We have full tactical presence in the Thessar system. Adeyemi allowed herself a small smile. The jump had gone perfectly. 2,000 ships, emerging from hyperspace in a coordinated assault pattern that had taken 40 years to develop. The Vorash swarm was directly ahead, surrounding what was left of Thessar Prime like a disease. Behind the swarm, the dying planet burned. Communications. Broadcast on all frequencies, Adeyemi ordered. Let them know we're here, she spoke clearly, knowing her words would be recorded and analyzed by every intelligence service in the galaxy. This was more than a warning to the Vorash. This was humanity announcing itself as a major power. Attention, Vorash swarm. This is the United Earth Navy. You have attacked our allies. You have ignored our warnings. We are humanity, and we have come to collect a debt written in blood. No quarter will be given. No surrender accepted. This is your only warning. The Vorash response was immediate. The bioships began to turn, reorienting their weapons toward the human fleet. There were thousands of them. A living tide of organic horror that had consumed 17 civilizations. They did not know fear. They did not understand retreat. They only knew hunger. All ships, weapons free, Adeyemi commanded. Target the heaviest concentrations. Show them what humanity built in the dark. The Iowa-class dreadnoughts fired first. Each ship was 12 kilometers long, built from titanium alloys and carbon fiber composites, designed to take incredible punishment and keep fighting. Along their hulls, massive railguns extended from armored bays. These were not the railguns other species used for mining or construction. These were weapons of pure destruction, capable of accelerating projectiles to 30% the speed of light. The first volley hit the Vorash line like the hammer of God. Each railgun slug was a solid core of tungsten carbide, weighing 10 tons and moving at 90,000 kilometers per second. When they hit, they transferred so much kinetic energy that the Vorash bioships simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no fire in the vacuum, just instant conversion from matter to superheated plasma. 30 Vorash heavy cruisers died in the first second. Target tracking reports successful hits, Martinez called out. Vorash are breaking formation. They're trying to scatter. Don't let them, Adeyemi said coldly. Destroyers, advance and engage. Carriers, launch all fighter wings. I want every bioship in this system either dead or running. The Valkyrie-class destroyers surged forward, smaller than the dreadnoughts but faster and more aggressive. They were humanity's answer to the fighter problem. Other species used energy weapons for point defense, creating networks of laser and plasma fire. Humanity used missiles. Lots of missiles. Each Valkyrie carried 200 nuclear-tipped missiles in vertical launch bays. The warheads were clean-burn fusion devices, designed to minimize radiation while maximizing blast effect. They were smart weapons, capable of coordinating with each other mid-flight, adapting to enemy movements, and selecting optimal detonation points. 1,000 Valkyries fired simultaneously. 200,000 missiles streaked across the battlefield, leaving trails of light in the darkness. The Vorash tried to intercept them with organic projectiles and acid sprays, but there were too many missiles coming too fast. The warheads began to detonate in carefully calculated patterns. Nuclear fire bloomed across the battlefield. Each explosion was a miniature sun, vaporizing everything within kilometers. The Vorash bioships were tough, evolved over millennia to survive in the harshest environments, but they had never faced nuclear weapons before. The heat alone cooked them from the inside out. The radiation scrambled their organic systems. The blast waves tore apart their structures. Hundreds of bioships died in the second volley. Then, hundreds more. Admiral, we're receiving a communication from Kelthara survivors, the communications officer reported. They're asking who we are and requesting confirmation of our intent. Tell them we're the United Earth Navy and we're here to help, Adeyemi replied. Get me locations on all Kelthara escape pods and damaged vessels. I want them pulled to safety. Admiral, the Vorash are adapting, Martinez warned. They're forming up into tighter formations, using their smaller ships as shields for the larger ones, trying to reduce the effectiveness of our nuclear weapons. Smart, Adeyemi admitted. But it won't save them. Launch the drone. Swarms. From the carrier groups, thousands of autonomous drones emerged. These were humanity's newest weapon, developed from experimental AI technology that had been banned by the Galactic Council as too dangerous. The Council believed that artificial intelligence should never be given control of weapons. Humanity had decided that the Council's opinion didn't matter. Each drone was small, no larger than a human torso, but packed with sensors, a small fusion reactor, and shaped explosive charges. They operated in swarms, coordinating through quantum-encrypted networks that were impossible to jam. They were fast, maneuverable, and absolutely ruthless in their programming. The drone swarms hit the Vorash formations like a plague of metal locusts. They darted between bioships, targeting joints, sensory organs, and weapon systems. When they found a weak point, they attached themselves and detonated, punching holes in organic armor. Individually, each drone didn't do much damage, but there were 10,000 of them, and they never stopped coming. The Vorash swarm began to break apart. Their formations collapsed, as ships tried to defend themselves from attacks coming from every direction. Bioships collided with each other in their panic. Some tried to flee, jumping to hyperspace in random directions. Others simply shut down, overwhelmed by the coordinated assault. "The swarm is routing," Martinez reported with evident satisfaction. "They're abandoning the Thessar system. Pursue and destroy," Adeyemi ordered. "I don't want a single bioship escaping to warn the rest of the swarm." This ends here. The human fleet gave chase. The Iowa-class dreadnoughts, despite their size, were faster than they looked. They had been built for endurance rather than speed, but they could still accelerate at 3 gravities sustained. The Vorash bioships were fleeing at maximum speed, but humanity's ships were faster. The chase lasted hours. Human vessels hunted down fleeing bioships one by one, destroying them with railgun fire or missile strikes. Some of the Vorash tried to fight back, turning to face their pursuers. They died quickly. Others tried to hide in asteroid fields or gas clouds. The drones found them and eliminated them. By the time the pursuit ended, 60% of the Vorash presence in the Thessar sector had been destroyed. The rest had scattered to deep space, broken and running. Adeyemi watched the tactical display and felt no triumph, only grim satisfaction. This was what humanity had built. This was what happened when you pushed a species into a corner and told them they were weak. Humans did not accept weakness. They adapted, they learned, and they came back stronger. "Status report," she ordered. 127 ships destroyed, Martinez reported. Mostly destroyers that pushed too aggressively into the Vorash formations. 2 Iowa-class dreadnoughts heavily damaged but still operational. Estimated 45,000 casualties. 45,000 dead. Adeyemi felt the weight of that number. Each one was a person who had volunteered to be here, knowing they might die. They had died fighting for people they had never met, for a species that most of humanity barely knew existed. But they had died for something that mattered. "Begin rescue operations," Adeyemi commanded. "Locate all Kelthara survivors. Get medical teams to damaged ships. I want every escape pod found, and every wounded person treated. We didn't come this far to let survivors die from lack of oxygen." The fleet moved through the battlefield, searching for survivors. Human ships pulled alongside Kelthara escape pods, using magnetic grapples to bring them aboard. Medical teams worked around the clock, treating injuries that ranged from radiation exposure to blunt trauma to oxygen deprivation. Some they saved. Some they couldn't. But they tried for every single one. Ambassador Moraine's escape pod was picked up by the destroyer UENS Defiant. She and Captain Thrival were pulled aboard by rescue personnel in powered armor, who handled them with surprising gentleness. Moraine tried to speak, to ask questions, but she was too exhausted. She was taken to a medical bay, where a doctor checked her over and gave her oxygen and water. When she woke up, she was in a small cabin aboard the Indomitable. Someone had cleaned her up and dressed her in a spare uniform. Her communicator had been repaired and charged. She checked it and found messages from Earth, from her family, from the diplomatic corps. All of them asking if she was alive, if she was safe. She sent a reply to all of them. 3 words: "I'm coming home." Then she got up and asked to see Admiral Adeyemi. The guards outside her cabin escorted her through the ship. The Indomitable was enormous, with corridors wide enough to drive vehicles through. Crew members hurried past, all of them focused on their tasks. Moraine could feel the ship's power humming through the deck plates. This was a warship, built for violence, and it made no apology for what it was. She was brought to the Admiral's ready room, a small office adjacent to the bridge. Adeyemi was there, reviewing reports on holographic displays. When Moraine entered, the Admiral looked up and smiled. "Ambassador Moraine, I'm glad you survived. Please, sit." Moraine sat down, still trying to process everything. "Admiral, what I saw out there. Earth doesn't have a fleet like this." The Council said humanity had maybe 50 warships. Where did all these ships come from? We built them, Adeyemi said simply. For 40 years, we've been building them in secret. In the outer solar system, in deep space, anywhere the Council wouldn't look. We knew the galaxy was dangerous. We knew other species considered us weak. So we prepared. But why? Why spend so much on weapons? Adeyemi leaned back in her chair. Because we've learned what happens to the weak in this galaxy. Ambassador. They die alone, while the strong watch and do nothing. We saw what happened to the Kelthara. We saw the Council refuse to help. And we decided that would never be us. Never again. So you built this fleet as a deterrent? No, Adeyemi said. We built it as a promise. A promise that if someone called for help, humanity would answer. Even if no one else would. Even if it cost us everything. Moraine felt tears forming in her eyes. You saved them. You saved the Kelthara when no one else would. We did what was right. Adeyemi replied. And now the galaxy knows what humanity is capable of. The Council is going to be furious. They'll demand explanations. They'll accuse us of violating treaty restrictions on military buildup. Some species might even declare war. What will you tell them? Adeyemi smiled coldly. The truth. That we asked them to help, and they refused. That we did what they should have done. And that if they have a problem with that, they're welcome to try and stop us. We'll be ready. Moraine thought about that. The political implications were staggering. Earth had just announced itself as a major military power. The balance of galactic politics had shifted overnight. Everything was about to change. What happens now? She asked. Now we rebuild, Adeyemi said. We help the Kelthara recover. We establish new treaties and alliances. We show the galaxy that humanity isn't just another weak species to be ignored. We're something else. Something that the galaxy isn't ready for, but needs to learn to accept. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the fleet. 2,000 ships, hanging in the darkness like steel stars. Behind them, Thessar Prime was still burning. But the Vorash were gone. The Kelthara had survived. Because humanity had refused to let them die alone. Welcome to the new galactic order, Ambassador, Adeyemi said quietly. Where strength is measured not by how well you protect yourself, but by how well you protect others. Where humanity makes the rules, not because we're the strongest, but because we're the only ones willing to do what's right. Moraine stood beside her, looking out at the fleet. At the ships that had been built in secret, hidden in the dark, prepared for a moment like this. At the crews who had died fighting for strangers. At the future that was being born in fire and blood. They thought no one would come, she whispered. They were wrong, Adeyemi replied. Humanity always comes. The Galactic Senate Station was in chaos. Representatives from every major civilization crowded into emergency meeting rooms, their voices raised in anger, confusion, and fear. The news from Thessar Prime had spread quickly. Humanity had revealed a fleet that rivaled the combined military strength of half the Council. They had intervened in a conflict against Council orders. They had destroyed a significant portion of the Vorash swarm, something no other species had managed in 1,000 years. And no one had seen it coming. Director James Chen stood outside the emergency council session and prepared himself. He had been recalled from Earth specifically for this meeting. The council was furious. They wanted explanations. They wanted humanity to answer for what they had done. Chen was ready to give them answers, just not the ones they expected. The doors opened. A crystalline delegate, its geometric body chiming with agitation, gestured sharply. The council will see you now, Director Chen. We suggest you have good explanations for your species' actions. Chen walked into the chamber with his head held high. The atmosphere was hostile. Every representative was there, filling the tiers of seats. But now, humanity was no longer on the lowest tier. Earth had been moved to the middle level, a symbolic acknowledgement of their new status. Chen took his place on the central platform, and looked up at the assembled powers of the galaxy. The Anthari representative who had dismissed him weeks ago now leaned forward with obvious anger. Director Chen, your species has committed a grave violation of galactic law. Earth was restricted to a defensive military force not exceeding 100 capital ships. You have revealed a fleet of over 2,000 vessels. You have attacked Vorash forces without council authorization. You have destabilized the entire political balance of this galaxy. Explain yourself immediately. Chen took a deep breath. This was the moment. Everything that happened next would determine humanity's place in the galaxy for centuries to come. He could apologize, try to smooth things over, promise to dismantle the fleet. That was what a junior species was supposed to do when confronted by their superiors. But humanity was done being junior. Honored Council, Chen began, his voice calm and clear. You demand explanations. Very well. Let me explain exactly what happened. 3 weeks ago, the Kelthara Alliance sent a distress call to every major civilization. Their homeworld was under attack by the Vorash swarm. They were facing extinction. They begged for help. He paused, letting that sink in. I came before this council and formally requested military intervention. I was given 5 minutes to speak. 5 minutes to plead for the lives of 4 billion people. And do you know what this council said? I. The chamber was silent now. Chen pulled out a data chip and inserted it into the central podium. A holographic recording began to play. It showed the previous council session, showed Chen's desperate petition, showed the Anthari representative's cold dismissal. The outer territories are not our concern, the recording played back. It would be inefficient to divert military resources to a region of no strategic value. Chen let the recording play through to the end. Let them hear their own words. Let them remember how they had chosen comfort over courage. The council refused to help, Chen continued. Every major civilization received the Kelthara distress call. Every single one said no. You were content to let an entire species die because it was inconvenient to save them, because they were too far away, because they didn't matter to your strategic interests. The Mutual Defense Clause does not apply to frontier territories, and Anthari tried to argue. We violated no law. No, Chen agreed. You violated no law. You simply violated every principle of decency and honor that this council claims to represent. You let people die because helping them would be difficult. He pulled out another data chip and loaded it into the system. This one showed footage from the Battle of Thessar Prime. Human ships tearing through the Vorash swarm. Nuclear weapons detonating in calculated patterns. Drone swarms coordinating their attacks with mechanical precision. The council representatives watched in stunned silence. This is what Earth built while you were ignoring us, Chen said. For 40 years, we have been preparing for a moment like this. Not because we wanted war, but because we learned what kind of galaxy this really is. A galaxy where the strong abandon the weak. Where civilizations die alone while others watch. Where the council talks about mutual defense but only defends those it considers important. You violated treaty restrictions on military expansion, a crystalline delegate accused. You built a fleet in secret, in direct violation of your membership agreement. Did we? Chen asked. Show me the treaty clause that restricts military production in deep space beyond the solar system. Show me the regulation that limits what humanity builds in unclaimed territory. You'll find there isn't one. Earth's treaty restrictions apply only to our home system. Everything else was built in international space, using resources we mined ourselves, with technology we developed ourselves. He smiled thinly. You never asked what we were building out there. You assumed we were too primitive to create anything threatening. You saw what you expected to see. That's not our fault. That's yours. The chamber erupted in angry protests. Representatives shouted over each other, demanding sanctions, restrictions, punishment. But Chen wasn't finished. Let me tell you what happens next, he said, his voice cutting through the noise. Earth is formally proposing a new mutual defense treaty. Any species that wishes to join will be guaranteed protection by the United Earth Navy. If you are attacked, we will come. If you call for help, we will answer. No matter how far away you are, no matter how strategically unimportant you are, because that's what true allies do. You cannot make such promises, an Anthari spluttered. You lack the authority. You lack the resources. You are still just one species. We're one species with a fleet that just destroyed 60% of a Vorash concentration that had consumed 17 civilizations, Chen replied coldly. We're one species that did what all of you should have done. And we're done asking for permission. He pulled up one final file. This one showed the Kelthara survivors. Thousands of them rescued by human ships. Showed Kelthara children clinging to human medics. Showed Captain Threevil and Ambassador Moraine standing together on the bridge of the Indomitable. High Commander Vesisthal died believing that no one would come to help his people, Chen said quietly. He died thinking the Kelthara were alone. He was almost right, but he was wrong about one thing. Earth came. Humanity answered the call. And we will never stop answering, no matter what this council says. The silence in the chamber was absolute. Chen let them sit with that for a moment. Then he played one more recording. This one was audio only. But every representative recognized the voice. It was High Commander Vesisthal's final transmission, recorded before his death. To the species who will face the Vorash next, learn from our mistake. Do not trust the council. Do not expect mercy from the darkness. Stand together, or fall alone. The transmission ended. Chen looked up at the council representatives and saw shame on some faces, anger on others, fear on most. The Kelthara trusted you, Chen said. And you let them die. They won't make that mistake again. Neither will Earth. He turned to leave, but the Anthari representative called out. Where are you going? This session is not concluded. Yes, it is, Chen replied without turning around. Earth is withdrawing from this council's authority. We will maintain diplomatic relations with individual species. But we will no longer submit to your collective decisions. We're forming our own alliance with the Kelthara and any other species that values action over empty promises. You cannot do this, the Anthari shouted. You will be sanctioned. You will be isolated. Other species will declare war on you for this defiance. Chen stopped at the door and looked back. Then let them try. Earth has been underestimated our entire history. We've been told we're too weak, too primitive, too young to matter. We've proven all of that wrong. If you want war, we'll give you war. But I suggest you think carefully about whether you can afford to fight a species that built this fleet in secret while you were ignoring us. He left the chamber. Behind him, the council erupted in furious debate. But Chen didn't care anymore. Humanity had made its choice. Let the galaxy deal with the consequences. The transport back to Earth took 3 days. When Chen arrived, he was taken directly to United Earth Command. Fleet Admiral Adeyemi was there, along with Dr. Volkov and the entire military leadership. They watched the recording of his speech to the council in silence. That could have gone better, Dr. Volkov commented when it finished. That went exactly as planned, Adeyemi replied. The council needed to understand that we're serious, that we won't be ignored anymore. Some species will see this as a declaration of war, Chen warned. Let them, Adeyemi said. We're ready. The fleet is mobilized. We have defensive positions established throughout human space. And we're not alone anymore. She pulled up a holographic display showing the Thessar sector. Human and Kelthara ships were working together there, rebuilding stations, establishing defensive networks, creating something new. The Kelthara have formally requested a military alliance, Adeyemi continued. They're offering us access to their remaining shipyards and technology in exchange for protection and support. They're also vouching for us with several other frontier species who have been abandoned by the Council. How many species are interested in joining our alliance? Chen asked. 12 so far, Adeyemi replied. Small civilizations, mostly. Species that the Council considers unimportant. But they're good people who deserve protection. And they're willing to work with us. Chen sat down heavily. This is really happening. We're creating a new galactic power block. We're creating an alternative, Adeyemi corrected. The Council has ruled for thousands of years. They've grown complacent and arrogant. They've forgotten that power comes with responsibility. Someone needs to remind them. And if they attack us? Adeyemi smiled grimly. Then we show them what happens when you underestimate humanity. We've been preparing for this scenario since the day we joined Galactic Society. We have contingency plans, defensive strategies, weapons systems that the Council doesn't even know exist. We can't win a war against the entire galaxy, but we can make it so costly that no one wants to try. Dr. Volkov pulled up another display. This one showing construction projects throughout the solar system and beyond. We're not stopping with the current fleet. Production is accelerating. We're building new shipyards with Kelthara help. Within 5 years, we'll have 5,000 ships. Within 10 years, 10,000. We're becoming a superpower whether the Council likes it or not. Chen thought about that. 5,000 ships. 10,000. An entire fleet dedicated to protecting the weak, defending the helpless, standing up for those who couldn't stand alone. It was an ambitious dream, an impossible dream, but humanity specialized in impossible dreams. 6 months later, the Treaty of Thessar was signed. 14 species joined the new alliance, formerly called the Outer Rim Defense Coalition. Earth provided military protection. The Kelthara provided shipyard expertise and diplomatic connections. The other species contributed resources, technology, and personnel. The signing ceremony took place on a rebuilt station orbiting Thessar Prime. The planet's surface was still scarred from the Vorash attack, but recovery had begun. Cities were being rebuilt. Survivors were returning home. The nightmare was ending, slowly. Ambassador Moraine stood beside Admiral Adeyemi as the treaty was formally ratified. She had been promoted to ambassador at large for the coalition, responsible for managing relations with member species. It was a massive responsibility, but she was ready for it. Do you think the Council will accept this? Moraine asked quietly. They don't have a choice, Adeyemi replied. We've proven that their way doesn't work. We've shown that there's an alternative. Some species will join us. Others will stay with the Council. That's fine. We're not trying to destroy the old order. We're just creating space for something new. And the Vorash? They'll be back, Adeyemi admitted. The swarm is huge. We only fought a small portion of it. But next time, we'll be ready. And we won't be alone. Across the room, Captain Threval was talking with human officers, discussing joint training exercises and tactical coordination. She had been promoted to Admiral, commander of the remaining Kelthara fleet. She had lost so much, but she was rebuilding. All of the Kelthara were rebuilding. With humanity's help, a young Kelthara child approached Moraine, holding a drawing. It showed human ships and Kelthara ships together, surrounded by stars. The child smiled shyly. Thank you, the child said in halting English. For coming. For helping. Moraine knelt down to the child's level. We'll always come, she said gently. That's a promise. Humanity doesn't abandon its friends. The child hugged her and ran off. Moraine stood up, wiping her eyes. That's what this is all about, Adeyemi said quietly. Not politics, not power. Just making sure that when someone calls for help, someone answers. That's what separates us from the Council. They help when it's convenient. We help because it's right. Moraine looked out the window at the fleet. Human and Kelthara ships patrolled together now, protecting the frontier, building something new. The Council had called it impossible, They had said humanity was too weak, too naive, too young to change anything. They had been wrong. Just like they had been wrong about everything else. The galaxy was changing. A new power was rising, built not on conquest or domination, but on a simple principle. No one fights alone. No one dies forgotten. When the darkness comes, someone will answer the call. And that someone would always be humanity. 5 years after the Battle of Thessar Prime, Director Chen stood before the Galactic Council one last time. The coalition had grown to 32 member species. The human fleet now numbered 4,000 ships. 3 more Vorash incursions had been stopped, each one defeated with fewer casualties than the last. The council had changed too. Some species had joined the coalition, abandoning the old power structure. Others had reformed their policies, adopting humanity's mutual defense model. The Anthari Dominion had even extended a formal apology to the Kelthara, though it came decades too late. Director Chen, the current council president, said. It was a crystalline delegate, but not the one who had dismissed him years ago. The council wishes to formally acknowledge the contributions of the Outer Rim Defense Coalition to galactic security. We propose integration of the coalition into the council framework, with full voting rights and equal standing. Chen smiled. We appreciate the offer. But the coalition will remain independent. We've learned that we work better on our own. However, we're willing to coordinate on mutual threats. The galaxy is big enough for both of us. Then let us at least acknowledge this, the president said. 5 years ago, humanity did what we should have done. You came when others would not. You saved lives that we had written off as lost. The council was wrong to doubt you. We were wrong to dismiss your species as unimportant. It was the closest thing to an apology Chen would get. He accepted it gracefully. The Kelthara have a saying, Chen replied. Strength is not measured by how well you fight, but by who you fight for. Humanity learned that long ago. We're just glad the rest of the galaxy is finally learning it too. He left the council chamber for the last time. Outside, his transport was waiting to take him back to Earth. But first, he made a detour to the memorial that had been erected on the station. It was a simple monument, listing the names of everyone who had died in the Battle of Thessar Prime. Human and Kelthara, names together, carved in stone and steel. At the top of the memorial was an inscription in multiple languages. They thought no one would come. They were wrong. Humanity answers the call. Why? 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 Chen touched the memorial and whispered a promise. We'll keep answering. Always. Then he boarded his transport and headed home. Behind him, the galaxy continued to change. The council adapted. The coalition grew, and humanity stood at the center of it all, proving that strength came not from ships or weapons but from the simple courage to help when help was needed. High Commander Vesisthal had died believing that no one would come. But his sacrifice had not been in vain. His people survived. His civilization endured. And they would never be alone again, because humanity had come. And humanity never stopped coming. The frontier had protectors now. The darkness had guardians. And the galaxy had learned a truth that would echo through the ages. When humanity makes a promise, they keep it. No matter the cost. No matter the distance. No matter what anyone else says. They thought no one would come. They were wrong. Humanity always comes.